Hello, everyone. My name is Kathleen Johnson. I'm your host of the Kreactivators Podcast, where we mix and try to merge activism with artistry. I have a very special guest today, IG sensation, TikTok aficionado, LTtheMonk. And I'll leave it up to you to tell the folks your government name if you want to. You're LTtheMonk on here.
Yes.
And you have been in Canada since 2017. And since then, you've made it your mission to share Black History Month facts with Canadians and also dipping down into the United States.
Mhm.
And that must be interesting. And so your passion for this is something that is infectious, and the way you do it is very interesting as well. So I'll let you introduce yourself, tell the folks a little bit about who LT is and why you do what you do in the way that you do it.
Thank you. My name is LTtheMonk. I'm originally from the UK, moved to Canada in 2017. And yeah, I knew that social media was the way that I would continue growing my career as an artist, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. So when I started doing street interviews, it was promoting music or talking about relationships. But it was only when I started diving into the Black history, the racial conversations that I love, that the videos really started to pop off. So I thought, okay, let me explore this more. And then for every one video that I made, there'll be another 10 videos or video ideas that people would give me. They would say, well, you need to also speak about this in Ontario, this in Nova Scotia, this in Quebec, this in Alberta. So then it just really snowballed into just everything that I'm interested in, not only historically, but also modern conversations about stereotypes and fighting against racism and, where do we exist in society? Anything that I'm interested in, I feel very grateful to now have this platform that I can explore it on social media. So yeah, it was just a love of the history fused with a desire to work out social media that then became what I make now.
Awesome. It's entertaining to say the least.
Thank you.
Just to see, I mean, and I've learned so much watching your content as well. And as I was telling you before we went on camera, I started during the pandemic having these kinds of conversations with people and became quite popular during Black History Month, because what I would do is, and it was really a part of my own learning, because as your book says, that I came for me the yesterday in the mail,
Amazing.
learn something new, Black Canadian history you weren't taught in school. I was taught nothing in school.
Sadly.
I grew up in Alberta in a time when it was 90% white.
Mm-hmm.
And there was nothing ever mentioned. Nobody in a history book looked anything like me.
Yeah.
Nothing was ever mentioned. We didn't even learn about slavery.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's changed a little bit, but not much.
Yeah.
So the contribution that a lot of people have in their minds is an American context.
Yes.
It's almost like Black people didn't exist in Canada until the 1960s, and we very much did. So when you are talking to people about this, I find it very interesting. Like for me, it was a journey of doing these workshops where I would research the Black history of the province.
Yes.
And then deliver a presentation on that for whatever group was asking me. But I thought, well, why do it about Canada in general? Let's laser focus on where people are at.
Yes.
And make it very local so it's more real to them.
Exactly.
And I learned amazing things. So I'm super excited to get into your book.
Nice.
But in doing this, what was the most, I don't want to say crazy story, but what was the most interesting, intriguing story, if you can pick one, where you were like, oh my God, like, what is this? What was the story that was like, Holy
Um,
smokes.
I think the first thing that comes to mind is the hockey chapter about the colored hockey league in the Maritimes, just because the sport is so white. Outlet is considered the whitest sport. I mean, obviously, you still have a lot of the winter sports that are generally associated with being white, but hockey, in terms of the major leagues, because you rarely see black players. You know, the stereotypes are that black people aren't built for the cold, don't like ice and all of that. I think knowing that the first organized hockey league in the world was a black league, that was pretty crazy. And then looking at how successful it was in comparison with now, where when you get to the end of the chapter, you see, you know, players less than 10, 15 years ago still had bananas thrown at them on the ice, still had the monkey chants, still had chants directed at them to go and play basketball instead, still had people in the stands wearing blackface to represent their fandom of these players. So I think the fact that even though some stories in the book might be more outrageous on the surface, I think just thinking about how if I went to go watch the Leafs today, how uncomfortable I would feel because of the rarity of people that look like us. I think that is just such a crazy contrast with 110, 120 years ago, when if you wanted to see the highest level of hockey being played in the world, it was a black league. So yeah, that really struck me as crazy.
Now, you mentioned PK Subban,
Yes.
and I used to live at Jane and Finch,
Okay.
and PK had a sports kind of thing for kids in that area because, as you know, at Jane and Finch, it's what they call an improvement area, and
Yes. Yes.
that's a nice way of saying it's basically a forgotten corner,
Yes.
and under resourced and over policed. Um, and he was doing a lot for kids in that area to get into hockey.
Yeah.
Um, and I didn't know that that's where he came up as well, apparently.
Mhm.
So it was just a beautiful way of seeing that legacy and his presence in the community doing something so powerful as keeping kids out of trouble,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
And did you ever get to meet or talk to any of these NHL, black NHL, not NHL, but any black league um, folks and have their endorsement or acknowledgement of what you're writing?
I haven't yet. That's something that I definitely want to get to. You know, the more that I'd love to interview people on social media and just get their personal perspective. But over the year that I wrote the book, because it was last summer that I started writing it, it really just was, you know, me in my living room, you know, sitting wherever I was, just Google, YouTube, reading books, watching documentaries. So yeah, I haven't really had any in-person contact yet, but I hope that'll come in the future.
Yeah, PK, get
Yes.
on it.
Yes, definitely.
Get
That'd
on
be
it.
amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing. So there are black figures from the United States that or other countries that are actually quite pivotal in movements in Canada.
Hmm.
Um, and that was something that I learned watching your content.
Nice.
Can you talk a little bit about connections to figures like Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey?
Yes. So Malcolm X, his mom, Louisa, she moved to Little Burgundy in Montreal. And her radicalization, her politicization that came from Marcus Garvey's Universal Negro Improvement Association, the Montreal branch. So, as I detail in one of the chapters, when you think about what Malcolm was talking about in the 50s and the 60s, you can go back to what his mother would have learned, the values that she would have instilled in him as a child. And that came from Little Burgundy, that came from living in Montreal's Black community. So not only is there that Caribbean link, there is also that directly Canadian link with Malcolm, and the same thing with Martin Luther King. He came up to Windsor and their Emancipation Day festivities multiple times. And in 1956, he gave the keynote speech at the Emancipation Day Festival. And in the same chapter as the Malcolm X links, I talk about how in the mid 50s and in 1956 specifically, there was this sense of confusion, of, existential dread, thinking about where would Martin Luther King lead this young civil rights movement. The Montgomery bus boycott was still happening. And the idea of how to take a movement where you are your house is being bombed, where you are spending days in jail just for, the most minute crimes, anything they could do to try and slow you down. It was such a difficult time. Emmett Till had been murdered, mutilated the year before. So with it being such a difficult time, when Martin was looking for guidance, he came up to Windsor and he learned about some nonviolence from the freedom fighters there. He saw this idea of the racial utopia that could be, and even though we know there's a lot wrong with Canada as well, in contrast with the American hell that he was going through, he described Canada as a heaven for Black people, because during the time of the Underground Railroad, heaven had been a nickname for Canada. If you said that you were going to heaven on the Underground Railroad, that meant going north to Canada. So he continued that, and he saw what a relative racial utopia could be like. So when he goes back to the US, he also takes things that he'd gotten from Canada, the Black community in Canada, to help him. So Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, even W.E.B. Du Bois, the Niagara movement, which was the predecessor to the NAACP, they met in Fort Erie in Ontario. The first meeting where they devised all the principles that would go on to be the principles of the NAACP, which Black Lives Matter decades later would also learn from. So yeah, there's a ton of connections between these legendary Americans and Canadian culture.
Now, little bit of a fun fact. I might be related to Malcolm X.
Damn. Okay.
My dad is from the same village as his mother in Grenada.
Nice.
It's a little village called La Digue.
Okay.
And his older sisters were friends with her, and they remember when she was going to America to marry this man.
Damn.
It was Malcolm's father.
Wow. Okay.
So, yeah, I have to go down that rabbit hole at some point.
Definitely. That would be crazy.
So it's very interesting that I always have to bring hip hop into everything.
Mhm.
It's very interesting how in this time of intergalactic beef
Yeah.
that, and we talk about being racially mixed a little bit later.
Mhm.
We had like a little pre-discussion about this in this space, but Drake is half white. He's also half Jewish,
Yeah.
which I think adds an extra little tinge to
Definitely.
some of the vitriol that he gets. Um, when you're on the street, you're doing your interviews, your one-to-ones, and you're asking people questions. When you're doing that in America, do they realize the connection, the direct connection and influence of Canada in a lot of their movements?
Um, Most of the Americans that I've spoke to didn't. Some of them didn't know Black people lived in Canada. So it wasn't even like they didn't know about the connection. They didn't even know there was anything to connect to in this country. Some knew about like the Black culture, but then it was Drake. that was the extent of their understanding. Some knew about Harriet Tubman, but no. Generally, I think people see it as this like mystical northern land of hockey and igloos, and they don't really know the true connections there.
Now, how do you, coming back to our side, I know a lot of Canadians didn't know that slavery happened here
Mhm.
for almost as long as it happened in the United States.
Yes.
Um, when you're talking to people, um, do you find that, because I don't know, I haven't had kids in all my kids are grown,
Mhm.
and I know they got some education in school,
Yeah.
and I find more Canadians that I talk to now know at least that slavery did exist here. But is that what you're finding on the streets? Do people actually know that, or are they surprised?
I think people will know it, but I think what can be very difficult is people play a lot of semantics with these conversations because they'll say, well, Canada wasn't a country when slavery existed. So then they'll say Canada didn't have slavery, or they'll say that it was New France that had slavery. So even though these things might be known, I think people still work hard so they won't be known in their true extent. So the people that I encounter, I think they do know, but outside of it just being a fact of, oh, there was slavery here, I don't think they generally know more than that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Interesting thing though, because you are from the UK. What is the UK's relationship to enslavement? Because I have seen things where people have said, well, we didn't have that here,
Mm-hmm.
completely missing that the old empire, the old colonial empire was single-handedly
Oh,
almost
exactly.
responsible
Exactly.
for the transatlantic slave trade. So, um, in Europe, what does this look like? Because that is completely foreign to me and probably a lot of my viewers.
I mean, yeah, I think it's tough because when people hear my voice and they understand that this is a British accent, because a lot of people actually think I'm Australian now. Unfortunately, no disrespect to Australia, but would like to be known as the place that I'm from. But people have such a lack of understanding of what the UK did that I'll get a lot of xenophobia of people being like, well, look at like what your people did. And it's like, I'm half Jamaican and half Irish. The reason that my family's migrated to the UK is because slavery and the potato famine decimated the countries of my ancestors. So then we had this idea that moving to the Queensland was the only place that you would truly find wealth and freedom and happiness. So this whole idea of it being my country, no, to begin with. So then I think on top of that, because of this idea of, yes, slavery wasn't there, all the crimes were done offshore in the Caribbean, in the various colonies from Ireland to Nigeria, India, across the world, Australia, the genocides and everything that the British did. I think, yeah, because it wasn't done in London and because it wasn't done in Manchester or Liverpool, there is this ability to sweep it under the rug. But the thing that I think is very messed up about that is the remnants are still there. The buildings where they traded the enslaved people are still there. The buildings where the royal family said, okay, yeah, we're going to give you guys these 50 slave ships. We're going to give you this loan to procure your weapons, and then we're going to take this tobacco and this sugar. All of those buildings are still there. The families are still there. The wealth is still there. The reparations that the slave owners got are still there. So, yeah, even though they didn't teach me about it in school, my learning about slavery was they show you roots. they show you a diagram of a plantation, and then they tell you that a white man developed a conscience and then solved everything, and that was the end of slavery, and then you sing Amazing Grace. That's the extent of my learning. But yeah, it's all still there. And unfortunately, because there is such a lack of understanding about that, it means that when people do hear my voice, they don't see me and see slavery and colonialism. They just see British person who thinks they can take over Canada, and then they respond with xenophobia or direct racism.
Yeah, I know that we talked about, this is a nice segue into the question I have for you about being biracial in this space.
Yeah.
Um and just in a lot of aspects existing in the world, it's an interesting body to inhabit because and I'll ask you a little bit about that Jamaican Irish connection because that parliamentarian in Ireland that went
Yeah.
viral for his
Yeah. That's what.
Jamaican sounding accent. I wasn't surprised, but a lot of people were like, "Oh my gosh, it sounds so similar to patois."
Yeah.
Um, but you were saying that you receive racism
Yeah.
or xenophobia when you're educating in Canada or other places, and what is it actually like to inhabit that? Because or embody that to people? Because like I know that I have a different viewpoint just simply because of the household I grew up in with
Mhm.
one mixed parent and one black parent.
Yeah.
Now, both my parents were from Grenada. So culturally, it was very consistent
Mhm.
in the household. Um, and in the Caribbean, like the Jamaican motto, out of many, one people. Once you are of the islands, you're of the islands. There's not a lot of like when you talk about a utopia earlier, in my mind, the Caribbean is the closest thing you get to that.
Nice.
In a lot of ways. Yes, there's colorism there and there's classism, but there seems to be this concept that we're one people. Now, when you get into this context, it's not like that.
Mhm.
And you can find yourself within your own self so polarized.
Mhm.
I've heard a lot of biracial people say that, oh, I don't like, I notice they don't fully go the distance when it comes to Black issues or causes because they feel like, oh, I don't want to identify too heavily
Mm.
with one side because then I'll be denying this other side. In your house, was that a discussion? Did anybody sit you down and say, this is what you're going to get out there, but this is what you are? Because Halle Berry's mother, for instance, said, look, you're beautiful the way that you are, and you are of both of us,
Mhm.
but this is how the world is going to see you.
Yeah.
And just give her Alicia Keys' mother did this too, giving them confidence that they are beautiful Black women.
Yes.
And I think that's really something that when you are, I know we talked about biracial white mom versus biracial Black mom,
Yeah.
uh, and all that stuff. There's a lot there, if you wanna delve into unpacking that, because I think it's such an interesting identity to carry
Yes.
when you're doing the work that you're doing.
I think, it's funny, yeah, we were talking about white mom, black mom, biracial, how that has become a thing on social media. But I think part of it as well is also the like black dad, white dad, biracial, because my white dad being Irish, he never got an English passport until he was a long time adult, and he had spent years when he was trying to come back to England and getting through security at airports. He'd spent years of people saying, "Oh, are you in the IRA? Are you one of the guys who's planting the bombs in the train stations?" So I think because he always had that middle finger to the British Empire spirit as well, And he spent his career as a high school English teacher teaching in black schools. It wasn't this idea of like, oh, you've got your white side and your black side. It's you've got your black side, but then there's also oppressed side that was the original colony of the British Empire, was oppressed. I mean, it's still oppressed now because there's still two different countries in that one space. So I think, yeah, even though my black mother was always like, yeah, this is what you're going to get in the world. This is who you are. Be proud of your black heritage. Even my dad was saying whiteness is an evil to the world. Whiteness is what can't be trusted. Love white people, but white supremacy is what is wrong with the world. You know, capitalist, white supremacist patriarchy is what is wrong with the world. So yeah, my mixed race friends, my biracial friends and family whose dads left or who faced racism from some of their families or that lack of rejection, I think I've always felt rejected by the world at large. But in terms of my own household, you know, it wasn't like that video. I don't know if you saw it the other day. There was a biracial kid and his white dad was saying that his haircut was too urban, and he was trying to say, you're lighter skinned than I am. Like, you need to change that haircut. I don't want you to be too urban. I never had that white dad experience. I always had the, no, you are black. Here is the Malcolm X. Here's the Martin Luther King. Here is, as we went through hip hop lyrics together, him being an English teacher, he was like, oh my God, Jay-Z, take that poetry. Nas, take that poetry. Tupac, take that poetry. So yeah, I did arise, or I did, sorry, I was raised with this consciousness of, no, these are the issues that I feel complete confidence in speaking about.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that is such a rarity.
Mm-hmm.
um, because in growing up in a majority white city province, the biracial kids, I always had this concept of biracial kids as being messed up.
Yeah, I mean, we are. We definitely.
And I don't mean to offend anybody out there that's
Yeah,
that's biracial, black and white, but I just noticed that there was this very obvious struggle
yeah,
with being from, both with being that particular mixture. I didn't notice it so much with people like myself, or people that were part Asian, or it was something that I think, because of the politicization of those two identities being
definitely.
such polar opposites,
Yeah, yeah.
that it was very difficult for those kids.
Yeah, I think for me, like, I always grew up and still live this existence where it's like, you're not really whatever the thing is. So people will still tell me, well, you're not really black. You're not really white. You're not really British. You're not really Jamaican. You're not really Irish. You're not really working class. You're not really middle class. You're not really from London. Throughout my life, I was just given this, you're not really whatever the thing is. So I think you do develop this either like a rejection of everything or a combination of everything. So when I was 18, it was a rejection of everything. It's, I hate every single group. I don't want to talk to any of you. I'm just going to listen to Eminem and just put my middle finger up to the world, or Tupac as well. You know, my mental health was definitely saved by both of them. But then I think it developed into that healthier side of, yes, I am a combination of all of those. And then just an idea of, to quote Eminem, I am whatever you say I am, and I'm separate from that. You know, you hear people, like, people say to me, oh, like, you sound too white to be black, or I've always thought of you as white in my mind, or yeah, again, you're not really British because you don't sound like it, or you're not really Jamaican or Irish because you didn't grow up there. So yeah, always being told I'm not really the thing. It just means like I know who I am and I can exist as this being that is a combination of all of those things and is just separate from all of those things, because ultimately I am just a being. I am a consciousness. And yeah, I think that that definitely helps me deal with it. But I know that, yeah, other biracial people, it is just, no, I'm just going to be fully black. I am just going to be fully white. And I won't bring my white parent to any social things, or I won't bring my black parent to any social thing. So yeah, I think we're all somewhere on that mixed spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had a similar experience now that you're talking about it. I don't think I've ever really unpacked it that way for myself.
Hmm.
Um, because where I grew up was so white that even my dad, who's mixed, who looks full on like Pakistani, if you saw him,
Yeah.
would get called the N word because it was just somebody of color and they didn't really know what they were looking at.
Yes.
Um, but for myself, when I moved to Ontario, I moved to Ottawa and I went to Carleton
Hmm.
and I started interacting more with Black people that had an experience of being around a lot of other Black people their whole entire life.
Yeah.
I would get a lot of that. I would get a lot of that. Oh, you're kind of white or sounding, or that I wasn't allowed to comment in hair conversations. I remember that very distinctly.
Crazy.
I'm all shaved down now,
Yeah.
but like you just have these differences like hair texture and things like that. So you realize, okay, I'm not really like this, like you said. I'm not really like that.
Yeah.
Um, and so it does, and you can internalize it as a rejection
Hmm.
of yourself. And now I kind of relish in that. I find for me, I've embraced my ability to code switch.
Exactly.
I don't think it's a bad thing
Yeah.
because I can relate to so many different kinds of people.
Yeah.
And it's not like you're faking.
Yeah.
It's like all of the, like you said, all of those things are me.
Exactly.
And it's like a Swiss Army knife. I'll, pull it out at different times depending on where I'm at.
Yeah.
But so we talked about your identity, itself, and in direct relation to the work that you do, when you started learning about all of these things, uh, what were some of the feelings that you had? Because I know for myself, like when I was writing my book, I cried.
Hmm.
I had to take days, sometimes weeks away from the computer
Hmm.
just because of being disturbed
Yeah.
by a lot of the things that I was learning. Um, so when you are doing these deep dives and you're doing your research and something really disturbing comes up, how do you navigate that emotionally?
Mm, I think I think there's a lot of feeling of validation there, feeling of proving that the gaslighting was gaslighting when you find it. Because again, growing up in the UK, because the racism is swept under the rug, when it would happen, and across Europe, anytime I was on a family vacation, when it would happen, and then people would tell you, oh, it's in your head. You probably said something that provoked this person. It wasn't that bad. You're exaggerating. When you have all of these things and you know that there's something wrong, you know that there is a riot going on, but nobody is talking about it. When I then discover that reparations were given to the slave owners and that intergenerational wealth is still a key part of the British economy, or looking at the slave wealth that Liverpool was built by, that London was built by, that the cotton that came from the deep south that turned Manchester into a booming cotton economy. That is validation. And same thing now, when people say, oh, we're so multicultural, we're so tolerant here. And then it's no, there was a principal in the Greater Toronto area that kept a blacklist to racially profile Black students. There are teachers and there are school boards that are organizing police to come in to do presentations on gang members, and they're showing all the gang members as Black, so people can be socialized into only visualizing gang members as being young Black men. That, while it's messed up, it feels like validation. It feels like I wasn't crazy. I wasn't making this whole thing up. It wasn't something that I did to annoy that person into calling me a slur or giving me bad service, whatever it is. So, yeah, while it's difficult, I think it is just I was right feeling, and then I can keep going.
That's a great way to look at it. I'm going to reframe that for myself from now on.
Yeah.
Um, Now, talking about, you had mentioned something there about, being gaslit and people saying it's about everything else
Mm-hmm.
than what it's actually about. Um, when you meet somebody that is, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you've met people in your travels that are very overtly, maybe even aggressively in denial.
Yes. All the time.
What are some of the tools that you have for dealing with that? Is that a teachable moment for you? Because I've been kind of socialized to think, back off from that and don't teach
Mm-hmm.
in that moment. Um, how do you navigate that, like in terms of your own mental health, your own safety,
Yeah.
and also really wanting that other person to learn?
Yes.
How do you balance all of that?
I think, I don't know whether it's being raised by two teachers or just, that ability to see anyone as just human at its most basic level. But I do think that pretty much everyone is redeemable. Everyone can have their teachable moments. And I always go back and forth, because then I'll watch a documentary about a murderer and be like, maybe they're not redeemable. I'll also go deep into the Hitler documentaries and be like, is he redeemable? I don't know. But yeah, I think whenever I see anyone, ultimately, I do see them as teachable. I do see them as redeemable. Maybe that's the Disney part of my brain, when even the most, racist of Southern characters in Remember the Titans will eventually come to love Black people through the magic of American football. Whatever it is, I do see these moments as teachable moments. So I try and approach it through humor and entertainment, because I do think if I can make you laugh and I can make you see the absurdity of these things, then I think I can get you to see the reality of the situation. Like, in the chapter on the Klan, I talk about them and I talk about how, because most racism now I find is systemic or as microaggressions, it's a lot easier for people to say that it doesn't exist. So if you go so outlandish as to talk about the Klan, it's indisputable that they're a racist organization. So when I tell this story about this interracial couple that want to get married and how the Klan tries to shut it down, but then you have this very humorous, satirical image of, they brought their cross to burn on the Black partner's lawn, but then they found out that him and his white girlfriend were at the aunt's house around the corner. So then they have to carry the cross a couple blocks to then take it to the next house. And, you imagine them in their hoods and they're sweating and they're thinking, God, this cross is so heavy. How are we going to take this so we can burn it and show how we really feel? Because it's so absurd and it's so funny, I do think that even the most like Nick Fuentes loving conservative guy would be able to listen to that and think, and that's dumb. Like they really did that because they were just mad that this black man and this white girl loved each other. I think that is a way to then teach. So I think it is entertainment. I think it's humor to begin with. Yeah, that's my fundamental idea.
As an amateur comedian, super amateur,
Yeah.
I have been paid in pizza and beer. Uh,
Nice.
I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think humor is an amazing teacher because when you pull out the absurd and you can show it back to people, I think there's a certain way that it taps into a deeper sense of it. I think a lot of people can reject moral
Yeah.
arguments
Yeah.
because everybody can say, well, I'm not a bad person. I didn't do that. I'm not like that. Um, it's easy to distance yourself.
Yeah.
But when you tap into like the critical thinking parts of it and you add humor, it's incredible. One of my go-tos is, well, even if, let's say, you could create a white ethno state,
Mm-hmm.
you're still on a floating rock hurling through space
Yeah.
with all different kinds of people.
Yeah.
So if you were like, to me, I heard this the other day, and this has become my new theory. Nobody believes in anything.
Yeah.
And I'll explain. If you had somebody that was actually truly white supremacist,
Mm-hmm.
they wouldn't be going to Mexico on vacation.
Exactly. Yeah.
They wouldn't be watching the NBA.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be uh, they wouldn't be eating, anything other than hot dogs and hamburgers and, craft dinner.
Yeah.
They like it's impossible to lead an existence where you only encounter everybody that looks like you from your culture that thinks like you. It's an impossibility. Even if you went to Estonia,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to find black and brown people there
Yeah.
because we're human beings, we're everywhere.
Yeah.
So it just points out, like when you start talking about pulling out the absurd, it just points out how this is a sickness
Mm-hmm.
because it's so incredibly illogical.
Yes. Yes.
And race doesn't actually exist. One of the things that gets me as an anthropologist of anthropology background is when people say, "Oh, we're all one human race." No, race is not
Yeah.
a biologically verifiable fact.
Yes.
We are one human species,
Mm-hmm.
and diversity is not just a strength in some kind of like kumbaya motto.
Yeah.
It's an actual reality
Yeah.
of how our species came to dominate other species.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that the Homo sapien, was able to morph into having lighter skin or having this feature or that feature to survive the environment we were in is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And it's why that we came to dominate Neanderthals and Denisovans and all these other hominid
Yeah.
types that we found other places. It's because of our diversity, our ability to change.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's the very thing that we are so against.
Well, and I think that's why it's also interesting because of that complexity, where if it was just like just a math problem, of this plus this equals this, then I think we would have been done with writing about it and making movies about it hundreds of years ago. But the fact that it is, yeah, we see the most powerful white people who are the symbols of white supremacy. They own teams that have majority black players. But then those majority black players are viewed and loved and hated by a majority white audience. And then that majority white audience, as you say, they go and eat Mexican food on their way home. And then they pay a black nanny to raise their kids. But then at the same time, they have a weird sexual fetish for black women that can only be expressed in the darkness, and that has become a whole subgenre in itself. And like everything, whether we're looking at the professional world, whether we're looking at sex, whether we're looking at education, everything is tinted by this whiteness. That's why I'm just so fascinated by it. And I think again why maybe being mixed is interesting. And even if you're not mixed, I think just being raised in a white place, Chris Rock went to a white school. Everybody hates Chris. It's about him getting beaten up by these white kids every day. He has a perspective, unlike most people. Chappelle, his Ohio upbringing, has a perspective, unlike most people. Richard Pryor, I think all Malcolm X, going to a white school in Michigan or Nebraska and then moving to Michigan. I think all of these experiences where you are kind of seeing both sides, again, you see the absurdity of all of it, you see the humor, but then, yeah, you also see that it's so interesting. Like, I find all of it so fascinating. And I will always love reading books and speaking about race because, like, yeah, it's just endlessly fascinating.
So what do you say to I saw it this morning on LinkedIn. What do you say to the colorblind folks?
Uh, so just like as respectfully as possible, be like, this actually hurts us more when you say you don't see color. Say that all of this does exist and it's very, even though it's a social construct, as you say, it very much affects our everyday realities. So while you think you're being progressive by saying you don't see color, that's actually then just kind of making everybody white or making everybody whatever, and you're not actually improving things. So yeah, I would say to them it's actually a lot better to see color, to see what I'm going through, to see what every different person is going through, and then let's try and make some progressive strategies from there rather than saying I don't see color.
Okay. And piggybacking off of that,
Yeah.
the folks that have an issue with the term people of color that are of color
Uh-huh.
is kind of like the other side of that coin. So we have people that are saying, I don't see color.
Yeah.
And then we have another flip of that coin that says, wait a minute, I don't like being referred to as of color because that is saying that there's people and then there's people of color. So how do you reconcile the flip side of that coin?
I mean, I generally try not to use people of color because I just feel like you're just saying colored, but in a more modern way. And if colored is offensive, I don't understand why people of color isn't offensive. I think it's just like a euphemism. So I don't personally try to use people of color. I would just rather say like black or indigenous or South Asian, Southeast Asian, because you can also get into, there's a lot of people in the people of color community that don't like black people that are also very discriminatory towards Black people. So I don't need to be referred to in this community. It's like, sadly, heard about in the LGBTQ plus community, there's a ton of transphobic people. I know in the UK, there's the LGB Alliance who are like, no, trans people are not with us. And I think that's very, if I were a trans person, I would think that's very hurtful to say I thought we were all this one community. So maybe they would say, well, fine then. I'm my own thing. I'm gonna do this to survive. So I think in the same way that, yeah, they call us people of color, get a lot of abuse. I get so much abuse from people who are also of color. People that have called me a Black supremacist, said that I'm nothing better than a white supremacist, said that I am a monkey, said that I am very close to the KKK with how I talk about race. So this is the hurt part of me speaking here. But why would I want to be a people of color if you hate me like the white supremacists hate me? So I prefer to just say, you're a Black person, you're an Indigenous person, you're a South Asian person. And yeah, maybe we can have some unity, but currently I think it's just know me as I am.
Yeah, I completely agree. Um, I do say people of color because I've acquiesced that it's a term everybody understands.
Yeah,
I don't love it.
yeah,
Um, and keeping with this thing, I do have a chapter in my book, and it talks about like the trials and tribulations of BIPOC,
yeah.
um, because it's an acronym that's become very problematic
Mhm.
for those reasons that you just talked about.
Yeah.
Like there's Indigenous people that will say, well, I am not, our experience, particularly on Turtle Island, is nothing like anybody else's. So we don't want to be in that.
Mhm.
Now, most Indigenous people I meet don't have an issue with it, but there are some that do.
Mhm.
And then you have the people of color in the brown spectrum,
Yeah.
and those are your Arabs, your Latinos, um, and Asians, South Asians that are like, okay, but we're not even named. So
Should be helpful.
that feels like erasure.
Yeah.
So it's a very I don't know if we'll ever arrive at a destination with that, but I also don't think that racialized is a solution either.
Yeah. I don't use racialized either.
You don't use it either.
No.
Okay. It's not used properly
Yeah.
anyway, and it's meant to be this replacement term for BIPOC,
Yeah.
but it's highly inadequate
Mhm.
because it leaves out white people
Mhm.
that are also racialized.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, they're not racialized in the sense that they're oppressed,
Mhm.
but they are quite literally, if you took it very literally, which I think you should, racialized in the sense that they are racially categorized people.
Yes. Yeah.
And they have an experience with that. That has had an impact on them. And I think to ignore that is to also have that same effect as people of color.
Yeah.
It's saying, we have this experience as a people of color group, and your experience doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We don't want to hear from you. You're harmful, you're dangerous, stay out of our discussions. And yet, you are the source of the problem.
Yeah.
But it actually has the impact of leaving white people out of critical race discussions and out of the part of solving this issue with other humans.
Mhm.
And so they don't grow,
Yeah.
they remain stunted. And then at the same time, we want them to come into these discussions when we want them to, and to be accountable.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things. That's why I wrote my book, because, and I know this is not about me. This is your interview,
No, but I do
but
want to read
that's
your book as well.
but that's one of the things that I thought, wait a minute, how are we actually practicing diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Mhm.
What are we actually doing here?
Yeah.
And what impact is it actually having? Because I think it was very obvious and clear after George Floyd what the mission was.
Yes.
But now we're years away from that. And the lines are blurring.
Yeah.
And there's people that are like, I don't want to be regarded as a DEI practitioner
Yeah.
because it's come to mean all of these other things. So respectability politics gets in there,
Yeah.
and what do they call identity, like the identity wars and all that gets in there, and people just like, no, I don't want to do this work, and I don't want to call it that.
Yeah.
So I just think, like, if you're working in this space, you have to sit down and define it for yourself
Mhm.
and where you stand with these things. Because when you get into rooms, this comes at you.
Yeah.
And I've seen people flailing, like, and I don't think the standard go-to answers work anymore. I
Mhm.
think you actually really have to have a very nuanced, critical understanding that also is void of demonizing.
Yeah. Yes. Totally. And I think it's a very interesting time because I was reading The Message by Ta-Nehisi Coates earlier this year. And I just love his humility when he talks about, I came up because of Obama. He's just very open about the fact that in the Obama era, that '07, '08, when he was running, it was this idea of we need Black perspectives. We need people that are going to be able to explain this for the magazines, for the newspapers, the news shows. So he got a lot of opportunities that maybe if it wasn't the Obama era, he wouldn't have necessarily gotten. Now, I think he is a phenomenal writer. So we always hope the cream will rise to the top, but he very much acknowledges that. And in the same way, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, that pandemic era, as you say, there was that call for understanding. It was let's put the black fist next to our logo and let's do the black square on Instagram for a day. Nice. Let's do all of these things to show how woke we are. Let's put a black person on every TV show that we have. But 6 years later, now that that has gone, now that there has been the Trump 2.0, the anti-woke, all of this, like racism is back and it's booming and it's doing very well, you see, yeah, there is this call for how can we deal with it? And I very much am in line with what you're describing of like, I just say what I do is entertainment and education. I never describe myself as a like DI practitioner or anti-racist advocate or activist or anything like that. I just say I'm an entertainer and I educate people, entertain, educate, expose. That's what I love to do. But yeah, I think it's a lot more simple, and just with my personal view of that education through entertainment, I think the way that I want to pursue being effective in this fight is just call me an entertainer, just call me an artist, consume my art and see how it makes you feel.
Yeah, I resonate with that. I do have a little pushback on the DEI label, just because I think I don't like when universities or corporations call it something else,
Yeah.
because I think it's just a reaction constantly where you're changing what you call something because you don't want backlash. But yet I see on the other side of the equation them being racist
Yeah.
and wrong
Yeah.
and digging their heels in. So I think there needs to be more of a backbone on this side of the equation.
Yes.
It is what it is, and that's it.
Yeah.
And, I think you weather the storm a little bit better that way. Um, because I just think of like us being the N word,
Yeah.
and then we were Negro,
Yes.
and then we redefined ourselves
Yeah.
as Black
Mm-hmm.
in the 1960s. And then African American came out of that, or Afro Canadian, or Afro Brazilian, or whatever.
Yeah.
You're always changing what you call yourself, but then the conditions you're living under don't change.
Yeah.
The perception of you doesn't change. Like me being called an N-word in 18 whatever really has, and being called Afro Canadian now, it doesn't matter. The same attitude still exists,
Mm-hmm.
and they contribute to how I'm perceived.
Mm-hmm.
So the name changes, but the treatment doesn't, or the conditions don't change. So that's why I just say leave it the way that it is.
Yeah.
And it is what it is.
And I think, my own view, like, it's a theory and it is subject to change. And friends of mine are very open with, I am an anti-racist educator. I am a DEI practitioner. And I love what they do, truly respect what they do. So it's all theory, my theory could change in 5 years' time. But yeah, currently, I think because those attitudes stay the same, the people that I have seen affect people the most, it has been Chris Rock more than it has been, uh, Cornell West or whoever it is. And respect to both of them. But I think I've seen more people who Chris Rock has made them laugh and they've understood, that's why it was racist, than here's the lecture on everything that's wrong and all of that. And, we need the intellectual side and we need the pop culture side. But yeah, personally, that pop culture side, like, I can tell you, like, if I'm having a conversation, I'm trying to illustrate the absurdity, I'm going to go with the jokes. We're all going to go with the funny stories before we're going to go with the 2-hour lectures. Like when Chris Rock, when he was in Never Scared, which I think is like my favorite stand-up of all time, when he was talking about like white guy mass shooting, and then they will say like, oh, maybe we really need to look at guns, do nothing. Black rapper says gun in a song, congressional hearing. So just the differences in just how I can make you laugh to try and develop how you're thinking or make you cry, whatever it is, just through entertainment. That is, yeah, I want it to be Michelin star McDonald's. Like, it's not going to be just complete low quality entertainment. It's the Michelin along with the McDonald's. But yeah, I think everything I'm trying to do is Michelin McDonald's.
That's amazing. Well, I'm a sarcastic person,
Right.
so that just leaps out of me when I'm trying to counter ignorance.
Yes.
So this is a podcast about where artistry meets activism, and I define activism as anything that you're doing to make the world a better place.
Yes. Nice.
You don't necessarily have to be holding a sign and going out in the street. Anything that you're actively, publicly doing to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
So we've talked about that part of you. And when you talk about the artistry part, tell folks a little bit about what that has been for you in terms of your background to this. Because I have an artist background getting into this work as well. And I think it's a very interesting orientation to have, because just the way that you can see things based on the experiences that you've had
Yeah.
creating.
Yes.
how is that, like, what has the artistry that you have done, what has it been, and how has it contributed to being in this space?
Great question. I think that when I was making music, because when I first moved to Canada, I was primarily a musician. I think when I was making music, if you listen to an album I released 5 years ago called On the Wall, it was very lyrically dense, and it was trying to talk about these issues, but with triple entendre, layered wordplay, metaphors, and very, very complex ways that didn't resonate enough with people. So I think it has just been this journey of I have this message, but I don't know the best way to get it out to people. So the artistry has found itself now being in the short format, those quick hits of entertainment. Most of my videos on social media are 1 minute, 20 seconds max. The street interviews are 35 seconds generally. So I think it has just been that journey of the best way to get out that message. But learn something new, Black Canadian history you weren't taught in school. If you read the paperback or the ebook, there are 6 sets of lyrics in the book, 4 interludes where I tell stories through lyrics, and then there's an intro song and a concluding song. But if you listen to the audiobook version, which you can find Audible, Spotify, Bandcamp, all of the audiobook sites, those interludes are songs on the audiobook. So it is still rap, it is still hip hop, but again, it is just what's the way that I can tell these? So I hope people will read the paperback or the ebook and then be encouraged to go to Spotify. Even if you don't buy the full thing, just going to Spotify or going to Bandcamp and clicking play on those lyrics so you can see, how does it sound with my voice performing it? How does it sound with an instrumental being rap music? So I think, yeah, it's just that journey of, it's the same way as, if a salesman is trying to get you to buy a car. First time I told you, it's got really great horsepower. You didn't care about that. Then I told you it was really comfortable. Didn't care about that. Then finally I said, it's got the best speaker system that you'll ever find. So when you're driving down the street, you are going to love every song that you play. That's what hit. So I think in the same way, yeah, I wanted to reach people through music. Didn't happen. Then I tried to reach people through different kinds of content. Didn't happen. Trying to reach people through this content right now. It is working, thankfully. And now the book, physical, ebook, audiobook, trying to hit people that way. So yeah, I think it's just all that, the journey to connection.
I love that journey to connection.
Mm.
Love it. Um, so we are going to get into a little bit of a serious topic
Mm.
just before we close out. And that's been the recent rash of Black people found hanging
Mhm.
from trees specifically.
Mhm.
And I think that, like, I just came from the South, and being in that space, I could, because my brother lives a little bit outside of Atlanta.
Mhm.
The crickets are loud. It's a very woodsy area. And it was ever present with me. I wonder what happened here.
Yeah.
I wonder what happened in this space.
Yeah.
So I think in our DNA as Black people, we have that history that of we were treated in this manner, very, very brutally. And to see that it's not gone away
Mhm.
is extremely concerning.
Yeah.
And, there's people that even describe George Floyd as a modern day lynching.
Mhm.
And that's a connection for us that's very real.
Yes.
So I just have it up here that just some facts that's of what's been happening, if people don't know, um, is that more than 70 suspected modern day lynchings across 7 southern states from 2000 to 2025. There was just one the other day. So how like many were hanging deaths officially classified as suicides, very quickly classified as suicides and accidents without any investigation into these matters. Um, and so when you talk about these kinds of things that are currently happening to Black people,
Mhm.
and people still want to come back with whatever they come back
Yeah.
with to say it's about something else. Now you're starting to see the thread. Black people don't hang themselves
Mhm.
from trees. We just don't.
Yeah.
Um, it's not something that I have known that we do
Yeah.
on our own.
Yeah.
So when you're still like you have the history, you have this vast knowledge of Black history, and then you see the current impacts of it that are ongoing. Um, when you're going into spaces and you're having discussions, and these current examples are there, how do you walk people through that? Because I find it like people are not something like this, like you talked about the extreme earlier, that's hard to connect to.
Yeah.
People don't have anything to say about this. They're just like, I don't know. It's really bad and it's horrible, but it's so extreme in the consciousness of people that they're like, I don't even know how to approach this
Mhm.
or how to engage with something like this. Um, it's really impacted me. It's really the Nolan Wells case really impacted me as well. Um, and you hear the ignorance. It's hard for me to. That's. I think everybody in this space has that switch that flips.
Mhm.
And that's mine. That's mine. When I hear stuff like, oh, we don't know all the facts of the story,
Yeah.
or we don't know what they were doing
Yeah.
before this happened.
Mm.
Um, or, how do you know? Like a lot of people are so uncomfortable with how quickly Black people know that something is racially motivated. Um, and it seems like we're always pulling out that card, that proverbial race card to explain why something happened. But it's a part of our history.
Yeah.
And so when we see these things, it's traumatizing. Um, and it brings us back to that place. But the denial is just always ever present. I find that that's my weakness as somebody in this space. I find that very difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
So when you're out there speaking and like how do you make that connection between very real things that are currently happening and history?
I mean, it's definitely tough because I think about how stories like Carmelo Anthony get way more coverage. And, I think I saw the video of like the White family in that case, and they were talking about Carmelo Anthony and like that video, like that got so much coverage, but then these events don't get the coverage. So yeah, all of it is very tough to like nail down that attention. But I think, yeah, like, I try and use the history maybe almost as like this soft exposure to the present. And then because if it's further away, it's easier to deal with. and then you can slip in, by the way, this is still happening. Like, I remember I did a workshop at a high school in Milton during the spring, and it was a digital activism course. So it was me there, all of the students, they were all grade 12. They all had a research project, and I was showing them how they could take those ideas and then put them on social media in compelling videos. So then somebody wanted to talk about genocide and, World War II and genocide of indigenous populations. And then, we're talking about how you can make that compelling video. And I said, well, what genocide is happening right now? And, they took a few seconds, and then they were like, oh, okay, so maybe I could talk about Palestine and then go back to previous genocides. So I would say my idea is maybe it'd be like a flip where if I talk about lynchings from the 1920s and tell you a crazy story that even though it's horrific content, it is still entertainment. If I tell you that and then, you give that, okay, well, how did the story end? And then it's, well, 100 years later, this actually just happened last week. Maybe people, because they are holding onto the story enough, maybe they will then want to connect with it more. Yeah, maybe I wouldn't approach just saying like, this is what happened right now, and you need to care about it now. Because also, like we were saying before, because there's just an oversaturation on social media, like I'll see a post about, or I'd see multiple posts about the most recent lynching for 24 hours, and then the news cycle will move on, the social media cycle will move on. Maybe if you ground it in history, where you're like, oh, no, it's not a 24-hour event. This happened 100 years ago, and we still need to talk about it. Maybe then it gives it that longer attention span, and then you say, by the way, story didn't end, story's still happening now. You're still your mind is gonna be haunted by it now. Maybe that keeps you caring for longer.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach, um, to contextualize it in something a little more grounded and substantial than the news cycle.
Yeah,
Well, this has been amazing. And as I said, and I've shown it a couple times, but get this,
thank you.
it's really, really going to bless you. I can't wait to dive into it. Um, and where can folks find you? I know on the back of the book here, it talks about you're everywhere. You're on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Patreon. Um, yeah, just a little bit of where folks can find you and interact with your content.
Yes. So if you want to watch the videos, then go to my Instagram at LTtheMonk, TikTok, YouTube. And then once you're on there, if you are interested in reading the book or listening to the book, you can click the link in my bio that will take you to whatever form of ebook or whatever form of audiobook you would like to consume. Or you can go directly to amazon.ca.com.co.uk to get the paperback. So yeah, it is all over the internet. And then I also do workshops that can be around Toronto and the Greater Toronto area, across Ontario, or if you are very far away, they could be online or in person, depending on how the conversation goes. So yeah, I would say just go to Instagram or TikTok or YouTube to begin with at LTtheMonk, and then everything can sprout from there.
Awesome. That's amazing. Okay. Thank you so much for entering my space.
Yes,
I
thank you.
am so honored and grateful to have you. and excited to see what you do next.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, and I'm excited to read your book as well. We have to talk about that after as well. And yeah, just want to keep these conversations going.
Yes, thank you, everybody. You can get my book, Thinking Outside the Boardroom: Creative Solutions in Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Anti-Racism, on most digital platforms. It's an audio book as well. I do not narrate it. People have asked me that. I have not narrated the book. I did have a narrator, but it is available in all of those forms. So Kobo it, audiobook it, whatever you feel comfortable with. We appreciate all of your support as authors. And we'll see you next time.
Yes. Peace.